How to automate photo placement in Photoshop. If you're a photographer, one part of your workflow probably involves creating mock-up images to showcase your work. Maybe you sell your work as art prints, in the form of canvas art or wall posters. Maybe you're just trying to create some high-quality looking images to showcase the work to potential clients. The bottom line is that generating these mock-up images one at a time in Photoshop is an extremely slow, tedious, repetitive, boring process. Maybe you come here to the mockup, you right-click, replace contents, find the photography image, drop it in, then you go File, Export, Quick Export as PNG, come to your mockup images folder, then you got to type the name. Cool, one mockup image completed. Now, if you're just doing this to create a few mockup images, you might say no big deal. But if you have a large collection of photographs, maybe dozens or even hundreds of photographs, painstakingly doing this for each and every single one of your photographs, it's really just a boring, repetitive, tiresome chore. Plus, if you're generating several different mockup images for each one of your photographs to sort of show how it looks in different rooms and environments and scenes, maybe you're showing off different product variants, different frame colors, whatever it is. You're making 10 images for each photograph. Maybe you have a couple hundred photographs. I mean, this could take easily an entire day or several days worth of work to do. Whatever your process looks like, it's probably a slow process that has you extremely bored of doing this repetitive work. And here in this video, we're going to show you how to automate this process inside of Photoshop. We're going to do this using a plugin called Batch Replace Smart Objects. This is basically a Photoshop add-on that extends the capabilities and allows you to really easily automate this process with a few simple button clicks. Really, the way it works is if it's a simple mockup scene with just one single smart object layer, it'll just automatically detect that smart object layer and perform the automated operation on that particular layer. But if it's a more complex file, maybe you have 2 different smart objects, maybe there's 10 different smart objects, whatever it is. All you need to do for a more complex file is just make sure that your target smart object layer is selected and highlighted in the layer stack. So it's really simple to automate this process. What we're going to do is up here, you can either select an individual Photoshop document to use, or you can specify an entire folder of PSD files to use. For this first demonstration, we're just going to keep it simple. We'll start with selecting one single Photoshop document. So we'll click here. This is our folder of PSD mockup templates. What we're going to do is just select the current one, and just like that, it's pointed to this particular mockup template. Next, you need to specify the input folder to use. This is going to be the folder that contains all of your photography images. So we're just going to click here, come back to our folder, photography images, select folder. There's a nifty little setting here that says stretch images to fit smart objects. Now, this is useful if you know that some of your photographs have different aspect ratios. Like in this particular folder, for example, most of these are 2:3. But we have a couple of 3:4s mixed in, another 4:5 aspect ratio. So if you have photos where the aspect ratio is different and you try to drop them in the same mockup template, what you'll end up with is the images might not look ideal. What might happen is if you try to drop a 4:5 in there, it looks like shit. Maybe we come here, try to do a 3:4, again, looks like shit. And so the useful thing about this feature is it automatically resizes all of the images from your input folder so that they perfectly fit the mockup scene, even if the aspect ratio is different. We're going to go ahead and leave this checked just because we know there's some variance in here. If you know for an absolute fact that all of your photographs are the exact same aspect ratio, leaving this unchecked does allow the operation to run faster. But as we just saw, if there's any variance whatsoever, then you're going to end up with poor looking mockup images. Final thing you got to do is specify the output folder to use. This is just where you want your final created mockup images to be exported to. So I just have this final mockup images folder here. We'll select it, and that's all set up. You can specify whether you want it to be in JPEG or PNG. If you want to retain the transparency, just make sure to set it up in the PNG file type. For what we're doing here, we're going to keep it simple, and we'll just go with the lightweight JPEG files. You can specify the save quality. So what this allows you to do is apply compression to the images. If you want the absolute highest possible quality images, then you want to set this towards the higher end of the spectrum. It's going to give you a better quality image, but the file size will be higher. Conversely, if you're trying to apply some compression, let's say you're posting these images on a website where load times are a concern and you don't want these gigantic 10 megabyte images that take all day to load. In that case, you're going to want to set this towards the lower end of the spectrum. What this does, it applies compression to each of the exported images. So the file size will be lower, but the image quality will be reduced as well. My recommendation is just test out a couple settings, play around with this, and just kind of see what works best for your particular needs and workflow. We're just going to keep this on 6 for our operation, and everything's set up. So we're just going to click run this now. And it's just going to run through, and it's just cranking out the mockups as we speak. It's going through, and basically for each one of the images in the input folder, first it opens up the image, and that's because it's doing the resize so that it fits the smart object. And then it just exports the mockup images to the designated folder. We can come here. We're going to pop over to the final mockup images folder. As you can see, it's just cranking them out, creating the mockup images automatically for us. And just like that, this operation is completely finished. So as we can see, it just created all these mockup images for us automatically, completely on autopilot. Saved us a lot of time and tedious work where we would have to come in and just manually do this for each one. And it's also worth calling attention to the 4x5 images and the 3x4s. As you can see, what it did is it resized them so they perfectly fit the mockup, and they look pretty good. You don't want to push this too far if you have an image where instead of a 4x5, if it was like a 1x2 or something crazy. I mean, you can only push the resizing operation so far to where it's going to look all squashed and distorted. I mean, this one looks pretty good. You can't really tell that it's been distorted all that much. If you look at the original image, we're going to come over here. It's wider and it definitely got resized, but it's not so excessive that it's like, hey, this something looks off about this. So I'm going to show you another really cool thing you can do with this plugin, and that's actually switch it over to a different mode that allows you to iterate through an entire folder of PSD files. So for that particular operation, we had it set up to just point to an individual Photoshop documents, just to use this one mockup template. But if, on the other hand, maybe you're creating several different room mockups or product variants or whatever it is for your photography mockups, you can actually click this little arrow here, and this allows you to select an entire folder of PSD files to use. So what I'm going to do here is select my folder of mockup templates. Inside of this folder, I have 10 different mockups that are ready to go, 9 templates actually. And so now that this is selected, the plugin will basically, for each one of the PSD files inside of this folder, we're going to go through all of the photographs in the input folder, export the mockup images, and once we're done with that mockup template, we're going to move on to the next template, rinse and repeat, same thing, go through all the photographs, export the mockups, and it basically allows you to just chain through as many different PSD templates as you need, set up the operation, and create all the mockup images completely on autopilot. So we'll set this up real quick. Input folder to use, this is going to be photography images 2. I'm going to uncheck this for this particular operation just because I know all of the images in this folder happen to be the exact aspect ratio that I need. Output folder to use, we're going to come here, we're going to say final mockup images 2, and that's it. We're just going to say run this now. And it runs significantly faster if this is unchecked. It's just flying through it right now. We're on to the frame canvas, we're on to the room mockups. It's just absolutely cruising. Couple more here, and we are almost done. Bam, this operation is completely finished. Something else you'll notice is it closed out a lot of the mockups as it went. So when it's set up in this mode, this is basically something that helps to preserve, CPU resources and not crash your Photoshop. Because instead of 10 PSD files, let's say you have a crazy workflow where there's like 50 or 100 inside of there. Many PSD files, they're also really sweaty, complex files where, maybe it's, there's a bunch of different layers and the canvas size is big. And a lot of the files that you'll have for mockup templates, they just take up a lot of computer resources to load and do read-write operations on. So the cool thing about using this feature is if you're running through a lot of different mockup templates, it'll just automatically close each one after it finishes, and it helps to keep Photoshop in a low memory state, helps to keep everything running faster, prevents your Photoshop from crashing, and allows you to just crank out mockup images way faster. So we're going to switch over. We're going to take a look-see at what got created here. We're going to zoom in a little so each one's on one line, and look at that. It just did all of that for us. It created 90 images. That was fast as shit too. I went through that in probably like 1 minute. So it's grouped by file name basically. So it front loads the file name, and then it's the mockup template name after that. That makes it really easy to come here. You can just drag and drop, pass it on to the next step in the workflow. Maybe you have a Shopify store, you take this and you just drop it, boom, upload it just like that. Maybe you come here, take this, boom, send, email it to a client or whatever it is that you're doing. And what it allows you to do is really just set this up to where, quite literally, just a few simple button clicks, you can just generate all the mockup images that you need. And the time savings of automating this can just be truly tremendous. 90 mockup images, it created those in probably like 1 minute. Just imagine coming in here, right click, replace contents, find the image. I'm on this image now. File, export, quick export, type, blah, blah, blah. Just in the time that we do one image, I think the plugin does it. It probably does it like 30 to 50 times faster. Like it's crazy how much faster it is to do it this way. A couple other things worth mentioning is the fact that you can actually save operations to run later. So you don't necessarily need to run this in real time. If you have a standardized sort of a workflow where you always know that these are the PSD mockup templates I use, and you always have a standard folder that you put your new photography images into, and so forth. If it's always going to be the same steps, you can just save even a little bit more time by just saying create canvas art mockups, And you can just save this operation here, and whatever is set up in this top section, basically, when you click the save button, it just saves all of those parameters. So instead of coming in and clicking and setting this up each time, you can just come here, create canvas art mockups, boom. You can click the run button. It'll just run the operation for you, basically. Not only that, but instead of just saving individual operations, you can also set up multiple step operations and chain these together so that it runs through your first step, completes that, then it'll run the second step, completes that, and so forth for however many steps you need. So one example use case might be, let's say you're creating mockup images for different clients. Maybe you have make all clients mockups. Maybe you're a freelance photographer, something like that. And you could set it up like folder of PSD files to use. You could come here. Maybe you have a client mockup images folder. Client number 1 has these particular PSD files that we use. Input folder for client number 1. Here are the photographs I took for client number 1. I'm going to select these. And for the output folder, I'm going to make sure client number 1 has his own final mockup images output folder. Then you could say clients number 1, mockup images, add the step, and this will basically be your step 1, where using this particular setup operation, it'll just run through all of the required steps to complete the operation, and then it can move on to step 2, step 3, and so forth after that. So step number 2 in this case, you could say folder of PSD files to use. Client number 2 has his own different mockup templates. Client number 2 also has his own photographs that you're taking, and client number 3 has his own particular output folder that we want to save to. Maybe this guy likes PNG images. Maybe he likes the highest possible save quality. He wants nothing but the finest. This would allow you to come down here, clients number 2, mockup images, and so forth, just like that, however many steps you need. You can run it from here if you want to, or you can switch over to the workflows tab and you have all of your workflow steps set up here like this. And what this allows you to do, make all client mockups. It'll start with step 1. It'll do this operation. However many PSD templates are inside of this folder. For each one of the photographs, it'll create the mockup, it'll export it to the folder, and so forth. It'll basically just create all of these mockups for client 1, move on to step 2, create all the mockups for client 2. From start to finish, it'll automate this entire process for you, chained together from end to end with one single button click. So the time savings that this can provide can just be truly ridiculous. If you're a freelancer, if you're using a lot of different templates, whatever it is, instead of coming in and doing all this manually, spending an entire week doing this, you can just come here, set this up, click one button, and just automate the entire process. One more question you might have is about how it handles transparency. I already talked about that earlier. I just want to show you a quick demonstration, however. So I'm going to come here, PSD mockup templates. We'll select this one. And I'm just going to set the background to where it's transparent. We'll save as PNG. We're going to run this again real quick using this PSD file. As long as the PNG file type is selected, it will preserve that alpha channel. So if you have a sort of mockup you're trying to create where you want transparency in the final images, no problem. Just set it up like that, and as you can see, there's no solid white backgrounds. Retains the alpha channel successfully. Anyway, check this plugin out if you're trying to automate this process and save a ton of time that you're currently spending doing this boring work manually. This plugin's a big time lifesaver. It'll free up countless hours of time that you're spending on this. Add it to Photoshop and automate this process with a few simple button clicks. You can find a link in the description. Hope you found this helpful. Make sure to drop a like and post juicy, tantalizing comments. That's all I got. Thank you guys for watching, and see you later.